All right, good morning and welcome to our second already. Can you believe it already? This is our second managers webinar for 2017 already. I appreciate the fact that these are early for you this year. The first couple days here, I've just not been able to schedule them later. So, okay. So again, I apologize. I think next month's might have to be early as well too. So thank you for attending. Again, please put in your name and your property name in the chat box so I can print off the chat box and again, track attendance. We think that these are valuable sessions. Obviously, we want you to think that as well. And we're trying to keep mixing them up. So today we're going to be talking about a little bit of a close up for 2016. Also kind of taking a look at some of the changes that we've got coming down the pike in 2017. So a little bit of review, but also some new material here to chat about. So please, again, contribute in the chat box if you've got something to offer. And we'll take it from there. So the first thing you've got up here on the screen is something I sent to you in the invite. And for those of you that are new managers, new properties, you probably just went through this. You probably you recognize this document. But for those of you that are managers that are perhaps been with Alpha Barnes for more than 5 years, you may not have ever seen this because this was something that we instituted not long after I started working with Mike at Alpha Barnes, and that is this a quick guide. So I'm going to scroll real quickly through it because I've got some other interesting stuff to talk about. But especially for those of you that are tenured managers and maybe haven't seen this, this is a little 17-page quick introduction to Alpha Barnes. It allows newcomers to the property to print something off or download it to their personal files and have something to reference to, again, being welcome to Alpha Barnes. The whole first section, or a little bit about the apartment reports that are due every day. Offices are open like businesses. There's maintenance, vision, policies for us, customer service, teamwork, and safety. Then we go on to talk about, oh my goodness, this is a place where operation. Then a couple of relationships that we have, and then a synopsis in the incidentally has. So what your newcomers get when we go through the slides, but this allows them to have something in their hands, something in their principal. This is so check with your supervisor these plaques. So a final welcome. And then part 2 is much more about Alpha Barnes specifically. We're an equal employment opportunity employer, and that you should be able to work without fear of discrimination or harassment. We actually have a little harassment program in the general orientation. We talk a lot about this as well. Slides. Fair housing, of course, critical. Next week, next Friday, is our every other month 2-hour fair housing webinar programs. Actually, the morning session is full. We're about in their new hard packet. A little bit about getting started on payroll, the fact that you are going to use a swipe clock and to set up the email so that you get your check stub via email, and then how everybody's paid. Just action on the shared drive. In other words, your supervisor and their administrative assistant drop those names into the sign-in sheet. I do not try and control that, but because this is a certificate program, I keep to those pretty strictly, but it's got to come through your admin. So please reach out to your supervisor if you need to add a couple names. I think we can take a couple more in the afternoon, but like I say, I think we're over 50 in the morning, and that's very hard to manage, checking in with people and making sure that people are there. So a little bit about employee benefits, the 30-day qualifying period, the fact that they're going to get a letter, it's going to get mailed to the property. They need to pay attention to the letter and not miss the deadline. So, so, so important. Then just a little bit about safety, because safety is so important. We're going to talk about that. And then finally, a welcome. That's what your new folks are getting. Close the current tab before we get started on the slideshow. So I want to mention the employee handbook. Again, this is kept on the shared drive so that when it's time to hire somebody, that packet is put together and the handbook is part of that packet. We did a huge revision back in February, just about a year ago. That handbook had not been looked at for a while. And I just wanted to point out today, kind of wrapping up 2016, that at the very end of 2016, December, we made a couple of additions to the handbook. Now, the handbook has been modified online on the shared site. So when you download the handbook, you're going to be downloading the latest one. So don't worry about that. And these changes were not substantial enough that we needed to reissue the handbook. Obviously, in February, it was a huge change. We had webinars about that. Those of you remember those? We had manager webinars that kind of walked you through the new handbook. So I did want to point out to you a couple of these changes. We make these changes because of potentially, well, in the drug testing policy, because of some OSHA changes that are being pushed out. The guidelines haven't gone final, but we got with counsel and updated some of the language in the handbook in anticipation of these OSHA changes. And then on harassment, we beefed that up. So you can see we had two changes here in December 1st and December 22nd, and then under discretionary benefits on 12/1. So I'm going to quickly go to those pages. Don't get busy. Because what we do is when we make these so that everybody knows that that was the change and date it. Okay, so we added this language, not a big deal, but this is on. We wanted to add specifically these for reporting improper kinds or unsafe working conditions. This is all part of change that's coming through with OSHA, because OSHA is very concerned that employees in workplaces across the U.S. feel like they can report an injury without getting retaliated against or harassed. We're not going to harass an employee about reporting an injury. Workers' comp is there for our employees. Obviously, there are people who abuse the system. That is not where we are focused here. We are focused on making sure that people feel that they can report a claim without getting in trouble. Also, we want employees to report unsafe working conditions. Because if it's unsafe for them or they sense that it's unsafe, we want to take care of that. So that was the language that was added there. And then we also added, this was added in 12/22. And the deal here is that OSHA is putting forth new guidelines that says, kind of like what HUD said on felony convictions. HUD said that companies can no longer have these broad, anybody with a felony is out, that you're going to have to be more discretionary as you choose which felonies you eliminate. So obviously AmRent has gone back and looked at the type of felony, how long ago, how old they were. So you're modifying that broad definition. Well, OSHA is taking the same stance on drug testing, and they are saying those broad policies that say, hey, anybody who's injured on site and needs to seek medical attention, you're going to have a drug test. And so we inserted new language here from our attorneys, and you can see that we added a little identifier number 1 that says anybody who's involved in an accident that requires attention from a physician or outside medical treatment for any other employee or third party, and or involves substantial property damage. So those are the 3 conditions that qualify that broad, instead of that broad policy. Now we're getting a little more specific. And here's the new language for which there is reasonable grounds to suspect a violation of Alpha Barnes's drug and alcohol policy may be required to submit to alcohol and drug testing. So a little bit different language. If you are taking care of an employee at a medical facility, please check with your supervisor if you have any doubt. Obviously, if you are seeing a physician, getting outside medical treatment, or you've got substantial property damage involved, and there's a reasonable grounds to figure that somebody was either using a drug, we're not going to turn you into drug experts. Reasonable grounds is the big thing here. If you think that this employee is not behaving, then that's reasonable grounds. Document it and have a drug screen. But we're just not doing the global one. And then we added B, any accident involving serious medical attention, including overnight hospitalization, will require submission to alcohol. So now we're getting a little more exact again. If you're injured severely enough that you have to stay overnight, will require submission at the sole discretion of Alpha Barnes. And then the other thing that changed was way back here. There you go. Under workers' compensation. Again, another reiteration that we don't want anybody to feel like they're going to be penalized or retaliated for reporting improper conduct, harassment, injuries, or unsafe working conditions, discrimination, retaliation, or other action. So we kind of made that really big. So again, if somebody is practicing unsafe work conduct, that's a different issue. We're going to visit with them about that and make sure that that's corrected, but they're not going to be penalized or retaliated against. We don't want anybody to feel like they can't report that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to put that in front of you. That was 16. So now when you hire new people and you're printing off the new handbook, that language is in there. So you will see that anyway. All right, any questions about that before we go to our slides? I sent you the slides that we use for GEO. Let me look at the chat box here real quick. I don't see anybody's got questions. I see lots of names and properties. Thank you so very much. All right. All right, so now I'm going to go in and open up our program. Oops, that's not the right file. Sorry, I should have had this. Unless you want them to be. Typically, these are manager programs. All right, so we're first going to talk about your role as a safety manager. Obviously, this is something that you need to be attentive to every day. We do a lot of work on the property, very, very busy days, and we have workers' compensation through Texas Mutual to cover injuries that occur on the property. So it's time for us to step back and kind of look at how we're doing. I just had my annual meeting or my semi-annual meeting with our Texas Mutual rep and talked about a couple of things. So here we go. So now notice again that our policy renews April 1st of every year. So this is about what, 1, 2, 2.5 years. So pretty good length of time. So about 30 months. Boy, that's kind of scary, right? 30 months is 2.5 years. So we've had 72 total claims in about 2.5 years. A little bit more than that. 6 of 6 would be 2 years. So actually closer to 3 years, actually almost like 33 months. So I studied the claims, and here's the info. We always thought that maintenance was the #1 group, and sure enough, the numbers bear out. Our lead maintenance techs have most of the injuries. Some of them are unavoidable. Some of them, just based on the description of the accident, are things that we could do a better job of. So all of your, notice that porters and managers each have 10% of the claims. I don't like seeing the term unknown. Texas Mutual asks you when you report claims to put in your property number, your property identification, the title. Please, please fill in all those spaces. Don't get sloppy. You'll see that there's a couple here that are unknown or unstated. Claims by tenure. What that means is I stepped back and I wanted to look at claims by how long you've been with the company. How long you've been with the company. Why is that important? Well, because I need to evaluate if people are being trained right away, or are we assuming that people know how to make an electrical repair or lift something heavy correctly? I think we have to be very careful there. So this is scary to me, and it should be scary to you. 56% of our claims are made by employees who have been on the job for less than a year. Not good, I think. And notice that 26% or a quarter, half of them in the first 90 days. So I think the message for you as managers is before you assign a task or ask somebody to do something that you think they should know how to do, I think you need to look them in the eye and say, you know how to do this safely? And just ask them that. And then make sure that you've got that you've got the proper personal protective equipment on hand. If there's something that they need gloves, they need a back support belt, you need to get a dolly, then, let's do that. And then you can see that it picks up again for people, 13%. I don't know that that's right. I'm going to have to relook at that numbers because it looks like I'm doubling up there. 13% for after the first year, but up to 3 years, and then again 5 to 10. So I don't know whether because we've been with the company for so long we get sloppy or we don't. I don't know. I don't know what happens there. But I think the biggest thing I want you to take away here is that 56% of our claims happen from people who are on the job for less than a year. So I think, you and me, if I hire an experienced lead or an experienced assistant maintenance, I'm going to expect that they know how to protect themselves safely. But I'm just telling you, I think we need to ask the question. All right. I see that a couple people have signed in with other people on the call. That's cool. I monitor for attendance on the managers' webinars, just the managers. Frequently, the material like we're talking about today is something that we need to review just with managers. It is your call whether you want a lead to be in on it. I don't know that it's a place for an assistant unless you're grooming the assistant. Again, your call completely. All right, so another thing to look at. I want to look at in 33 months and 72 claims, where do we have most of the injuries? So look at number 9. Look at 9 claims for strain or injury by lifting, reaching, or pulling. So people are not lifting, or they're reaching far away instead of getting closer to the object and lifting it. So expect to see more training on that. I'm not happy with miscellaneous other. That's way too vague. I don't know what that is. I look to you as a manager. You're the one at the property. When you have an injured person, the more specific you can be about the injury, the more it helps Texas Mutual, and the more it helps us in terms of getting our arms around curtailing injuries to our staff. Okay. Hand tools. And then cut, puncture, scrape is like our fingers and stuff. Slipping and falling, 5 claims each. And then animal and insect bites. So that's the most claims. That's not necessarily the most expensive. Okay. Here are, and then right below it, you can see the highest cost per claim ranked. Somebody, one of the biggest claims is an individual threw something and threw it at height, and it was too heavy and hurt themselves. Really should not have been doing that. Slips and falls on a ladder, that's not good. Those get expensive, folks. So those are the expensive ones. Oops, I see a typo. My apologies. Fall, slip on SAM level. And then again, frustrating, strain and injury by miscellaneous. Unfortunately, Texas Mutual has those codes. So oftentimes you can put those in, they put, they'll drop it into there if they don't have any more details. So I just urge you to put in whatever detail you can. All right, so this is your supervisors have got all of the detailed backup for this, all of it, all of it, all of it. This is just a screenshot of one of my spreadsheets because I wanted to highlight the blue and the pink areas there. The blues are slips and falls. So you can see that we had 28 out of 72 claims were for slips and falls, 39% for slips and falls. And there's one for $55,000 a claim, and it's a big claim here last year. This is 4-1 of 14 to 15, 4-1 of 15 to 16, 4-1 of 16 to 17. So this is the current year right here, these two columns. And then again, strain or injured. We keep messing with our shoulders, our backs, our upper arms. Half of the claims. I don't know whether we're doing things we shouldn't or we're not taking the time. I don't know the cause. All I can do is report the report. So I want to put this in front of your face. This is one big claim here. All right. All right, so let's look at body parts. When we get hurt, what do we hurt most often? You might not be surprised by the lower back, but you might be surprised by hands and fingers, for Pete's sake. I don't know, and a lot of it I think is gloves. I don't know whether gloves are being worn, but when I see people getting splinters or we've had a couple needle sticks, I get concerned that we're not wearing gloves. So there's body parts. And then highest cost per claim. Incredibly frustrating that this says the first one is insufficient info. I think that's probably one of our open claims. But this means that whoever reported the injury was not clear or specific. Obviously, Texas Mutual gets an adjuster on the claim, and they're going to reach back out to you and to the employee to get more information. So whatever you can do to help in that regard, it just equips us as an organization to better address it so the next person doesn't get hurt. I mean, the object here is to provide insurance for people who do get hurt on the job. We want to always, always do that. But we also, for Pete's sake, want to save people from getting hurt. So kind of help us help, it's the old Jerry Maguire. Help me, help you. All right, one more slide. Let's look at properties. So we have one property that has 5 of the 72 claims. 4 claims at 2 others and 3 claims at 2 others. Now, you got a big property, you got a lot of people on staff, or you've had a lot of turnover, that's going to happen. But that hopefully is not the norm. I am really happy with our timely reporting. 57% of the claims were reported same day. That is excellent. 13 more were just a day late. So that's good. Texas Mutual watches that. They will let us know if we fail to report timely. I just saw somebody drop into the chat box that just says, manager has arrived. Manager does not help me track you. Again, we're tracking this year managers that are able to attend sessions. So if you've logged in as a manager, please go back in and add your name. I can't track manager. And then, of course, we have to pull out those sites that reported late. Again, Texas Mutual is watching this reporting closely. It's not good to wait. 3 days is about as long as you would want to wait to report an injury. Now, whether these people didn't think that they were really hurt or, I don't know why the tardy reporting, but 113 days is ridiculous, quite frankly. 35 days is ridiculous. So your takeaway here is to be sure that in your next staff safety meeting that you say, look, if you get injured, don't hold back. Report right away. Report right away. Don't feel like you're Superman or Superwoman and you're not going to get hurt. Report right away. Because we don't, 35 days is very hard to get details. If you feel like there should have been a drug screen, we don't have an opportunity to do that. Not with any kind of reliable data. So just monitor that. Again, hats off to us because we're doing a really good job by far and away. All right, the last thing I want to look at is we have 8 open claims. 8 open claims. That's not bad. You'll see from the dates that the last 3 are from this year. So, it's appropriate that they should be open. You need to know that when a claim is made, Texas Mutual immediately puts forth an estimate of what they will pay for the claim. So while you see a reserves number there on the far right hand, that doesn't mean we're going to necessarily spend that dollars, but it's what Texas Mutual will put. Lots of times these close out with not paying this much, but we're looking at open claims. So there's one from October, July of this past year. Another one in October of this year. Isn't that amazing that it was exactly the same day a year later? So those 2 are both ladder claims. One obviously potentially more serious. I don't know why the ladder was on the post, but anyway. The 12-1 claim, that probably will get closed and not go away. Notice that there's been nothing paid. There's nothing in reserves. This is a WASP thing. 12-8, don't know how that's going to come out. And then these last 3 have no money paid and nothing in reserves because they're too new. They're just simply too new. So question here, does this apply to part-time employees since they don't have medical coverage? Yes, this is not medical coverage. This is injury on the job. Part-time people are included. Remember, part-time people may not qualify for getting onto our medical group plan with PCHS, but this is workers' compensation. It has nothing to do with our medical group plan. It's for employee injuries on the job. So, you know, the one on 117 will probably clear out pretty easy. Don't know about the 19. Don't know about the 1228. Cut hand while removing an AC motor. Again, don't know whether gloves were involved. I can just tell you that if I got a cut on my hand, those things are a nuisance, don't you think? You know, they don't cost a lot of money, but gosh, they're a nuisance. All right, so that's it on workers' comp. Any other questions on workers' comp? Thank you for asking about part-time employees. Any other questions? If they are, fire them up. Otherwise, we are going to move to some results. And again, your supervisors have all this information. Some information about turnover. Turnover. We have had a lot of employees come in and out of the Alpha Barnes doors. We've had some huge growth in 2016. Those of you that have been with the company for over 5 years have got to nod your head in that. And 2017 is shaping up to be just the same. All right, so Sue took a look at our turnover last year. So this is just for 2016. So we went in and we looked at all the payroll periods in 2016. So there's the codes, the columns across say code, then the manager, how many, the percent of the total, and net. Now net is net of lost properties. So what we do is we take out any of the turnover if we've lost the property, because that's probably something that we have very little control over. So 42.5, I will tell you, is a little high for the industry. The industry as a whole for all positions is about 33%. So we're a little high. Maintenance staff tends to be about 40, almost 40%, 37, 30, 38 or 39% lead maintenance. And then leasing tends to be about 30, 34, 35%. So the percents you see here are percent of the total. Okay? So obviously, lead maintenance are our most volatile group in terms of turnover. And then and look at leasing, assistant managers, and assistant maintenance at 14. Okay. I wanted to look at tenure. Again, I'm a huge fan of looking at excuse me, when people leave the organization, when do they leave the organization? Because we're trying to get our arms around why. Did we just do a horrible job of recruiting? Did we do a not so good job of interviewing? Did we not, you know, be forthright in what this person was going to have to do? Or are we just hiring the wrong people? So notice underneath the title, 65% of turnovers had 12 months tenure or less. That's a scary number. So that means almost 2/3 of our turnovers leave us in the first year. Now, I think I would be very concerned if most were leaving after years and years of being with us. I think I would be concerned there too. But I have to wonder whether we're doing a good job of interviewing and hiring the right people, or people are good people we all know are hard to find. Are we hiring someone just to get somebody who fogs a mirror on staff? Why does Alpha Barnes not have retirement? We're not big enough an organization to be able to. You mean what do you mean by retirement? Not exactly sure what you mean by that. The number of properties that have pension funds has dropped to almost none. So, all right, so down the left-hand side, let's look at terminations. Those are involuntary. Unknown, again, I hate this, people. Please, please, please. We look to you to fill in the blanks. Voluntary, And we'll look here in just a minute about why. Lost property. We only lost 7 people last year to property loss. Retirement plan with years. I still don't know what you mean by retirement plan. I'm having a chat with a manager who's asking about why we don't have a retirement plan based on, okay, we don't have a 401k because it's very expensive to have that. We haven't been big enough to have that. Maybe now with that we're growing, we might consider that, but we haven't in the past. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. A little frog has come to live in my throat. We'll obviously take that back and ask those questions. All right, so 50% of all turnovers were in the first 3 months. So I have to wonder, because that's happening so fast, and so many of them are assistants, leads, leasing, and assistant managers. I'm concerned that we're not taking the time to hire the right person, or maybe we're just not asking those solid interview questions that give us insight into that person. I've got some great interview questions that I'm happy to share with you. All right, so now let's look at why they left us. Obviously, we can't take care of the 25 people that are unknown, but here are the reasons for separation. Wow, excuse me, hang on. The reasons for separation based on voluntary or involuntary. All right, so let's look at voluntary first. So you can see the numbers here. Quit no notice means 55 people just walked off the job. No notice, I'm leaving. This shows very little respect for the supervisor, for the boss, for the organization. Very concerned about that. Job abandonment means that we just didn't show up. So job abandonment and quit no notice are very, very much the same. So that's a big number, folks. Voluntary quit. Now, I'm concerned about health and child care. No one should have to leave our organization because they've got health issues. If they cannot perform the essential functions of the job, then yeah, maybe they have to terminate. But if somebody's got child care issues, again, I don't know what that is, but those 2 categories particularly concern me. They also represent a liability to us. I mean, if somebody says I can't work at Alpha Barnes anymore because of my health, I'm hoping that they came to a manager and said, you know, what can I do to continue to work even though I can't work full time, or I can't, you know, can you find me a different job or whatever. So I'm concerned about that. Obviously, if somebody finding another job, if you can only select one, I'm going to guess that there are people who left for another job and also for more money. But, you know, if you have to pick one, you have to pick one. So those are the reasons that people abandoned us. There's only one person there who didn't come back from leave, just opted not to come back. Nobody said they disliked their supervisor. Really? Maybe they thought they were going to get in trouble for saying that. I've been a supervisor and I know people didn't like me, so. All right, involuntary. Let's take a look at people who are asked to leave. Number 1, poor performance. Again, as long as we can link that back to a performance standard, that's okay. Management change, there are the 7 that we lost due to the property being lost. Poor work habits, I am so glad that there are 0 in there. The only reason I say that is because What is a work habit? A work habit is so vague, it represents a liability. Remember that when people leave us, the more that we can be clear about the separation, the more we manage the liability in somebody leaving the organization. For example, the 9 that say inappropriate behavior. I don't like that category. Your opinion of what's inappropriate and my opinion about what's inappropriate might be very different. So again, as long as that is identified specifically, because inappropriate is a judgment word. Inappropriate is a judgment word. It's not a fact word, it's a judgment word. Insubordination is a fact. Poor is an evaluation word, but if it's linked to a performance standard, you're okay. Poor work habits, a little more vague. All right, so reasons for separation. All right. Sites with 5 or more terminations, there you go. Now, I'm not asking you to identify yourself. There are a bazillion reasons why your site name might be up there. And they're all very legitimate. You could have a supervisor change. You could have a staff change, a lot of staff leave. You have a lead maintenance leave, and that lead maintenance takes 2 maintenance technicians with him or her. So I don't want you to get, if you're from one of these properties, don't feel like the finger's being pointed. These are facts. And maybe right now at this point in time, you're right where you need to be, that you had to go through some growing pains, some people changes to get on the right track. That happens all the time. So I think this knowledge is important for you to have, but I also don't want to dwell on it. Regionals feel the same way, folks. They're very protective about changes in their portfolios. Again, we had a lot of transitions. We had a lot of new properties and new units come into the to the Alpha Barns family. I will tell you that 2 times that happened to me when I joined a new organization, in both situations, I left the organization. So it's in times of great change, it is reasonable to see an uptick in terminations. So again, maybe these all had to happen in order to get to where we need to be. We have some new regionals this year. That makes a new supervisor. Sometimes that works well. Sometimes it doesn't. We've seen a lot of managers kind of transfer from property to property and, find the right spot. We want this to be a career. We want this to be a place where you feel like you're making a difference. And the regionals want that too. Also, this is based on, the size of the portfolio. Some people have monstrously huge portfolios. And so these numbers are not that big when you think about that. When you think about all the people that Williams, Melson, Miller, Rebusel, Bradley, all of these people that have on state, even Christy Quinn and Connie Quillen, all the people that these people, supervise, those numbers are not that big. But that's how they fall out. All right. So let's close out our session by talking about some good stuff. I've almost been on this for an hour with you. General orientation. Look at the numbers on general orientation. Big months in February, June, July, October, November, December. This is a testimony to the growth of the group. Also, I want you to see these numbers. We added 140 people to the organization. I think I put a, nope, I didn't put a percentage there. So somebody take 140, 136, 135, and divide that by 439. That's a 31% growth in headcount. That's huge. So the termination numbers need to be in perspective when you think about that. 31% growth in headcount. So any other comments here? I want to close out by adding that we are very likely going to add what we call toolbox talks. These are one-pagers that heighten, that are going to focus on those areas that we have most claims, and these will be in addition to the safety meeting material. It's a one-pager and just designed to be a quick conversation, but I think we need to jump all over the areas where we're having 50% of our claims or 36% of our claims. So watch for those. I'll start plugging those and I'll send them direct to you. Speaking of that, we're trying to get email updated. I know some of you have not been in the distributions. If you haven't gotten the link for this meeting, please do not wait to the last minute for asking me, because lots of times I'm not on email or I'm not in a situation where I can forward that to you. Please check with your admin or your supervisor. They may be able to do that more quickly. What else? I'm sorry to keep you kind of long. It's 9:52. Any other comments? All right. Again, I track managers. I do not talk. I do not track other staff members when we record attendance at managers' webinars. Again, most of them are designed for managers. Not for the remainder of your staff. What else? Next month, I want to do something on marketing. And so I'm going to throw out a challenge to you. I'll send you another email to remind you about marketing ideas. We're going to be talking at the 1st of March, starting to get warm, although, gosh, it's going to be warm. It's warm. It's been warm in January. But let's talk about marketing. I'd love to have you send me, so 2 things here, and again, I'll send you a little request. Marketing idea that worked, and it could be a program, a marketing partner, an outreach plan that worked, resident retention plan that worked. Send me something that worked, both internal marketing and external marketing, and why you think it worked. So 2 things there. What worked and why you think it worked. Do that. Again, I apologize for these being at the 1st of the month. I try and get them to the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th, but when my Thursdays get busy that I can't do this, then I have to take what Thursday I can get. So I know that that's not convenient for you, and again, I apologize for that. I will try and, so Chris, don't send that to me now. I'm not going to track it. And I appreciate that idea, Chris, but I need more than that. I'll send you a little note, everybody, to remind you, and we'll just create a share session. I've got some ideas from my background, especially for affordable housing, and we'll go from there. All right? Thank you all for being on the call. I appreciate it very much. Have a great rest of your day, and I will check with you soon. Watch for that email from me. Thanks, guys.